So in this video, we are going to do applications of systems of linear equations. So we're actually going to apply our systems equations to real-world situations. So when you're done with this video, you should be able to model certain situations by two linear equations. And then we're also going to learn to solve certain situations by using our systems of equations. To do this is a four-step process. First, you're going to have to identify the variable. So if you use x and y, you need to say x stands for this, y stands for that. Then you need to write your two equations. This is step 2. Because we're solving by a system, you're going to use x and y in your two equations to be able to solve. So then you're going to solve your equation using your three methods that we use. And then you need to write a sentence to answer the question. Since these are going to be application problems, at the end it's going to say, okay, what is the answer to this? And so since they're asking a question, I expect you to write it as a sentence. So there are three types of situations we're going to do. The first one is how many of each type will be kind of the question and answers. How many apples and how many oranges could be an example. The second type, we're going to compare two things, like two companies, company A versus company B. Who kind of ends up, at what point do they cost the same? And the last one is mixing liquids. If I would mix this with this and I want to create this, how much of each it would take. The first one is how many of each type. So you sold two different types of wrapping paper for your band fundraiser. One type sold for $6 a roll and the other sold for $8 a roll. You collected a total of $92 for 14 rolls sold. How many of each type were sold? So really when you're looking at this, you want to look at the last question. And that really gives away what you're trying to solve. You're trying to solve for how many of each type you sold. Well, we have two types. We have a $6 roll and we have an $8 roll. And we don't know how many of each. So in step 1, we got to define our variables. So I'm going to say x represents the number of $6 rolls and y is the number of $8 rolls. So that is step 1. Step 2 is writing your equation. So in this type, you're always going to have two totals, a money total and amount of how many total of each you have. So if you have 14 total, that equation is x plus y equals 14. It's how many of the x plus how many of the y gives you your total of 14. So your second equation is going to involve the money. So if you actually went to the store and was calculating, so you bought something that was $6 and you bought like 5 of them, you would go 6 times 5. Well, since we don't know how many we're buying that $6, we have 6x plus how many we buy of the 8, so 8y, or in this case sold, and then that gives us our total amount we spend, which was 92. Step 2 is probably the hardest step, but you'll find out all these are set up very similarly. Just kind of make sure you write good notes down in your directions, or in your, write down good notes in your notes, and then make sure you write down any questions that you have. Don't be afraid to make comments in the margins of your paper. That's what it's there for. So I'm going to solve this by my system, and it's set up to solve by elimination because all the variables lined up. So I need to cancel out. I have a 6x, so I'm going to make opposite by multiplying by negative 6 to get negative 6x minus 6y, and then I go 6 times 14, which is negative 84. My 6 make 0, so I have 2y equals 8. Divide by 2, y comes out to be 4. So I sold 4 of the $8 rolls. So then I need to figure out my x. So I have x plus 4 equals 14, which is live. You can figure this in your head, just minus 4 over, and x is 10. So that is step 3, this kind of solving right here. So 2 and 3 kind of combine together. So then your last step is to write your sentence. So for your sentence, you could write something, I sold 4 $8 rolls and 10 $6 rolls. Again, you're just answering that last question. Alright, so on 2, it's another situation of how many each type. In this situation, you have 70 coins of nickels and quarters in her piggy bank, the total of $13.90. How many of each coin does she have? So since Katie has 70 coins, that is our total. And you have nickels and quarters. And so that's how many of each type. The nickels and quarters, which is generally your variable. So I'm going to do N for nickels, for the number of nickels. And I'm going to do Q for quarters, for the number of quarters. So that is my step 1. Notice I just didn't write nickels or quarters because it's how many quarters and how many nickels is what N and Q are standing for. So my two equations, I have a total of 70. So N plus Q equals 70, just doing my step 2. And then I'm trying to calculate money. So nickels is 0.05, that's how much a nickel's worth. So I'm going to take it times how many nickels, plus a quarter, which is 0.25 Q, and that gives me $13.90. So again, in this situation, they're lined up for us to use elimination. So I'm going to eliminate my n's. So I'm going to times by 0.05. I have negative 0.05n minus 0.05 q, and that gives me negative 350. My n's cancel. I get 0.0 or 0.2 q when I subtract them, and right here I get $10.40. Divide by 0.2. Q comes out to be 52 quarters. Well, if I have 52 quarters and I only have a total of 70, that means my nickels has to be 18. And you can just plug Q back in to figure that out if you couldn't do that in your head. So then my last step, again, is writing a sentence. Katie has 18 nickels and 52 quarters. Alright, so on 3, this is your other type of problem, comparing two things. In this situation, you are comparing two cable companies, or two internet companies. Cable 1 charges $12 per month and $2 per hour. Mid-Continent charges $27 per month and 50 cents per hour. After how many hours would you need the internet per month? Per month would the service be the same price? So looking, kind of examining, we are comparing Mid-Continent to Cable 1. So you're going to have an equation for each of them. So look at your last sentence. You're asking how many hours. So how many hours? Hours is one variable, so the number of hours. And then after you know the number of hours, if you're calculating this, well then you can calculate how much you owe, or you can calculate the price. So I'm going to do P for price. So you're going to write two equations. You're going to do one for Cable 1 and one for Mid-Continent. So for Cable 1, if I want to know the price of Cable 1, so P equals, I have to pay $12 that month, plus the $2 per hour, so that is 2H. So that is my Cable 1 equation. So then I need to do one for Mid-Continent. So to calculate their price, it is 27 per month plus 50 cents, or 0.50, per hour, and that is my second equation. So notice on this one I can use elimination or I could use substitution. I probably wouldn't use graphing on any of these word problems just because you may not be guaranteed to get a nice answer. So I'm going to use substitution. Since P equals this, I'm going to plug it into that P. So I have 12 plus 2H equals 27 plus 0.5H. So I'm going to solve for H. I'm going to minus 0.5. So I have 12 plus 1.5H equals 27 minus 12, 1.5H equals 14. Divide by 1.5. Oh, 15. Sorry, there's a mistake there. I caught that. Alright, so 15. So 1.5 divided by 15, H comes out to be 10. So again, my last step for this is to answer the question after how many hours. I don't need to solve for P because I'm only asking for the number of hours. So I can write after 10 hours, they cost the same. That's my sentence. All right, we are going to stop this video right here. This is a longer video in 2 sections. I wanted to give you as many examples as possible, so make sure you write or make sure you watch part B of this video. We will do one more comparing 2 things problem, and then we also will do the third type of problem, which is a mixing liquids.